So today we're going to talk about the Clarity Connect Contact Center for Lync. I'm here with Jon Rauschenberger. He's a partner at Clarity Consulting. Jon, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Clarity Consulting?
Thanks, Kai. So Clarity is a Chicago-based ISV and custom software development consulting firm. We've been in business for about 18 years, and over that time we've helped customers solve needs in their call center and other customer care areas by delivering real-time communication-enabled solutions. Today we're talking about Clarity Connect, which is a product we have in the market. Over the 18 years we've been delivering these solutions, though we've done that through a mixture of other products that we've built on different platforms, along with custom solutions that we've built through our consulting organization.
Great. So why don't you give us a little bit more information about Clarity Connect itself? Like, what is your approach to the contact center?
When we were working on the product and really making the decision whether we wanted to bring a contact center solution to Lync to market, there were a handful of things that really swayed us to the decision to bring that product to market. The first was the investment Microsoft was making with a platform-first strategy with Lync. And what I mean by that is delivering platforms and APIs that third-party vendors can use to create solutions using the same infrastructure and the same APIs that Microsoft uses to deliver capabilities within the Lync product. We felt like that was a different approach to delivering the infrastructure for real-time communications than most vendors have taken in the past. The other key factor was the programming model. The fact that we could build a contact center solution, all of the media and call handling around that, using mainstream development tools, all done in .NET and C# with developers working on this who didn't need to have intimate knowledge of the underlying plumbing. So the developers didn't need to know the SIP protocol, the voice codecs, or any of the underlying infrastructure. They could simply program to high-level .NET APIs. That allowed us to deliver a product at a significantly lower cost on our side in terms of the development resources required, but it also allows us to continue to innovate and customize the product as needed to meet our customers' needs at a fraction of the cost of what it would take on competing platforms.
Oh, interesting. So I imagine there are Lync customers out there who don't have a contact center. What are they missing out on?
The three core capabilities we extend Lync with the Clarity Connect product. First is the ability to deliver automated attendance. Now, the most common of these would be an interactive voice response system, what you're used to when you dial into a typical customer care scenario where you're prompted for information. We extend that, though, to also support instant messaging as well as applications. So if you think of a website that customers are logged into, that can also be an automated attendant where we collect information that we need to intelligently route that request to the best available agent. The second capability is the ability to queue calls and route them through an automated call distributor to that best available agent. And here we're using skills-based routing combined with the presence engine that Lync provides to quickly determine in real time which agents are best capable of handling a call when it hits a queue. And then the last piece is metrics. Call centers live and die on metrics, both real time, being able to see what's happening at this very moment in the call center, as well as historical, being able to look back over time, over the last month, the last year, the last 5 years, to determine if we're living up to the service level agreements we've made and we're delivering a good experience to our customers when they call in. So our software extends the core functionality that Lync provides with those three key areas that are required to operate a call center.
So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the Clarity Connect admin console. Now, as you see here, this is delivered in browser, and this was one of the key decisions we made early on in the product, was to deliver all of the application functionality that end users will interact with, whether it's a supervisor or an agent. We deliver all of that either in browser or integrated directly in the Lync conversation window. So we have no software that needs to be installed or deployed on any user's machines within your environment beyond the Microsoft products that you're using already today, being Lync and Internet Explorer. Now, I'm logged into the admin console for one of our demo environments, and I'm logged in as an administrative user. And the instance of the software we're interacting with here is configured for a human resources help desk, where we're taking calls from employees in two different geographic regions, North America and Latin America. And we're using that geographic region to determine which agents we're going to route the call to. So the first thing we'll take a look at is in the portal maintenance screen. Let's take a look at the queues that we have configured. And here you can see we have two queues configured as you would expect, one for Latin America and one for North America. And if I go in and edit the queue for Latin America, you can see some of the settings that we allow customers to configure on an individual queue that changes the behavior of calls when they're routed to that queue. The first one is our recording rule. Now, call recording is a native capability within our product. Customers can choose to turn it on or turn it off as needed. One important note is we don't license call recording separately. So the capability is there in the software and customers can choose to turn that on or off as needed. And as you can see here on an individual queue, I can specify whether I want to always record calls, never record calls, or leave that setting unset. And we'll have the ability to trigger that call recording rule at other locations. Now here we can also set up some things like a forwarding URI and a direct incoming URI. What these allow customers to do is control what happens when a call hits a queue. If you want to forward that to another URI, whether that's a telephone number, a voicemail box, or another SIP endpoint. We can also specify a direct incoming URI. So if you want to provide a different phone number that customers can call that will bypass the main greeting and route them straight to a queue, we can do that as well. And then lastly, we can also specify a different set of hours of operations for this queue than we have for the main contact center. So if a customer, for example, has a support desk that stays open for extended hours, but their sales desk is only open for normal business hours, we can have different rules applied in terms of the hours of operation on each individual queue. The last thing here then is profiling this queue with the skills required to take a call out of this queue. And what this does is it allows you to go in and say any call, or customers to go in and specify that any call arriving in this queue can only be routed to agents that have a specific skill or set of skills. Now we can see in this environment we have a very simple skills matrix where we have one skill for each of the queues, and in this case the queue is profiled to indicate that calls coming into this queue need to be handled by an agent that have a skill for Latin America. So we have our queue set up. The next thing we'll take a quick look at is our agent configuration. So I'll jump over to the agent maintenance screen. And what we want to do here is take a look at how do we set up an employee who's going to take calls that are routed through the call center and have those directed to the individual employee. Now the first thing we need to do is configure an employee to act as an agent. And we can see here we have an agent configured already named Rebecca Laszlo. And if I bring up the Lync client, you'll see that on this machine I'm logged in as Rebecca. So I'm going to be receiving any calls that are directed to her. Now if I edit the settings for Rebecca as an agent, you get some feel for the attributes you can set on an individual employee that controls how calls are routed to them and how we collect information about those calls. The first thing we see here is the access level. Rebecca is set up as an end user, and that's going to constrain what she can do through some of the admin and configuration screens. Alternately, users can be configured as a supervisor, and then we also have an additional setting called an administrator who has access to all capabilities. Next are teams and locations, so we can group agents together into locations and teams within that location, and we'll collect and roll all of that information up from a reporting standpoint, both real-time and historical, so you can take a look at how different groups are performing relative to each other. We can suspend and terminate an agent. We can also specify call recording rules at the agent level. This can be useful if you have some employees for whom you always want to record calls regardless of any other settings. For example, a new hire would be someone you may want to record all calls for. You also may have some employees who you never want to record calls for. A common scenario here would be physicians. If you have anybody who is governed by HIPAA or other compliance rules, you may want to specify that you never want their calls recorded. Then lastly, in terms of the settings we're going to take a look at here would be public name. And this is used for customers who choose to enable any form of chat support. And in this case, you may not want to expose the employee's actual name to the participant on the other end of that chat session. And here you can see we've got Rebecca set up to just display a name of Rebecca L. So if she does get connected to a chat session, whether that's to a customer through web chat or a coworker through a link-based chat model, in both cases her identity will be masked and she'll simply appear as Rebecca L. Now once we have an agent properly configured to be an agent on the platform, the next thing we need to do is specify the skills that agent has that's going to control which calls are routed to him or her. Now here you can see I've gone into Rebecca's skills setting, and we've got our two configured skills here for North America and Latin America. In this particular instance, we have 5 different levels at which you can specify a skill for an agent, and that's going to control how our automated call distributor allocates calls to the agent when we have callers waiting in multiple queues. So if Rebecca becomes available and we have callers waiting in both the North America queue and the Latin America queue, if Rebecca has a higher skill level in one of those skill matrices, we're going to offer that call to her first. Now in this simple example, we have Rebecca set to have both skills at a first level. We also have the ability to define skill templates. So if you are configuring lots of agents, or your customers need to configure lots of agents, they can define a template and then apply those to agents, and that will set all of the skills to the appropriate levels. So we'll go ahead and leave Rebecca configured as is. We now have our queues set up and we have Rebecca configured as an agent. The next thing and the last thing we really need to do is to set up the call flow that's going to trigger that automated attendant that answers the inbound call, prompts the caller for some information, and then determines what to do with the call based on that. Now that's managed through our call flow maintenance screen. So what we see here are a list of all of the call flows that have been configured in this instance of the product. And here we have one call flow available, and this is our Quick IVR starter. Now the Quick IVR is a new feature in our product that allows end users to set up, manage, and edit the flows of calls coming into the contact center. If I bring this up, you can see we have a fairly straightforward call flow here. We've got our visual editor on the right-hand side, and we've got our property pane on the left-hand side. And you can see we're on the top, we have a main menu item where we're playing a prompt and greeting the caller, and then prompting for a couple of different options, in this case only 2, North America or Latin America. And the call branches and flows down through each of those trees to a point where it's eventually routed to a queue and then is offered to an agent. Lastly, if we get some bad input, if the customer provides input that we aren't able to recognize, we'll simply hang that call up. So we'll come back to this a little bit later on in the demo and make some changes to the call flow, but here you can see a visual representation of the flow of calls coming into this particular call center. Now to take a look at what's happening in the call center in real time, I'm going to bring up our dashboard. Again, this is a browser-delivered capability that allows customers to take a look at what's going on today in the call center in real time. And what we see on the dashboard are the 2 queues that we took a look at earlier, Latin America and North America. Each of those are represented as a tile. And for each of those queues, we can see some information about what's happened today already in the call center. So in the case, for example, of North America, we've taken 4 calls. Our average speed of answer for those 4 calls is 14 seconds. And the longest available agent in that queue has been idle for 10 minutes and 35 seconds. Now obviously these numbers are fairly low. This is a demo environment, but you can imagine in a real call center you'd be seeing calls flowing through, and you'd be able to quickly see at a glance how you're doing in terms of servicing those inbound calls. Now each of the tiles has a health indicator at the bottom that gives you a very quick glanceable piece of information about how you're doing against a KPI that you've defined. So in this case, we're measuring ourselves against what percentage of calls are we answering out of a queue within 20 seconds. And these types of things are critical for call center managers to be able to very quickly and easily see what's happening in the call center. Do they have an appropriate level of staff? Are they living up to the SLAs, the service level agreements that they've committed to? The dashboard is one way we do that. We can also configure alerts. So you can choose to receive email notifications, instant messages, or phone calls anytime a call center deviates out of the range of acceptable metrics that you defined. Lastly, here we also see this roll-up queue on the left-hand side. This shows you an aggregate set of metrics across all of the calls that have come in. So a total of 7 calls across the 2 queues with an average speed of answer of 13 seconds. Now if I drill into one of the queues here in North America, for example, we see that Rebecca is an agent who's available within that queue. We also see that her status right now indicates that she is an eligible candidate to take calls from the call center. Now if I change her presence in Lync, the call center platform is going to see that and is going to toggle her status to indicate that she is not available to take calls. Now this is one of the core concepts we built into the product in terms of the integration with Lync, where the presence published in the Lync environment is one of the factors that we use to determine whether an agent is an eligible candidate to take a call. Skills is the other, and then the agent also can manually go in and temporarily take themselves out of the queue. So what I'm going to do now is place a call into the call center. I'll get connected and go through that call flow that we just took a look at in the editor. Now, this would be the same experience that a customer would have dialing in from a phone. The call will get routed to a queue, and then it'll eventually get directed to Rebecca. Now, before I do that, I'm going to mark her as busy, so the call will sit in queue until I change her status, and then it gets connected to her. So let me go ahead and place that call.
Welcome to HR Central. For North America, press 1. For Latin America, press 2.
And I'm going to select number 1.
Please hold while I connect you to the next available agent.
I'm going to place that call on mute, and we'll go ahead. We can see that the call is sitting in queue, and as a supervisor, I have the option to say I want to take that call. But what we really want to do here is toggle Rebecca's presence to a state that indicates she's available, and then we'll see that call get connected through to her. I'm just going to mute that here so we don't get any echoing. Now, what happened there was the call center platform saw that as soon as Rebecca's presence in Lync toggled to an available state, and it knew that she was a candidate for that call based on the skills required and the queue that the audio was routed to, it offered the call to her. Now, we can see in the Lync conversation window, beyond just connecting Rebecca with the caller, we've also used the extension pane on the right-hand side to provide context that she can use to manage that call. Now, in this example, we've got a tabbed interface where Rebecca can look at a variety of different pieces of information about this call. So, for example, Rebecca can take a look at the flow that the caller took through the IVR. And I'll go ahead and maximize this. So we see all of the details of the call as it was routed through the IVR. I can also take a look at a history of communications with this customer. So all previous calls from this customer. I can take a look at the agent who handled those and any notes and disposition codes that were entered in on those calls. The last tab here is an example of how we can also integrate customers' custom applications directly into this tabbed interface. So any browser delivered application, we can provide that directly to the agent when the call is connected, and we can load in a screen that's appropriate based on information that we collected in the IVR. A typical example here would be a CRM system where we're loading the information about a particular customer, or in the case maybe of a help desk, we can load a ticketing system's trouble ticket screen for the item the customer is calling about. In all of these cases, what we're looking to do is reduce the amount of time it takes the agent to handle the call by providing them with additional information based on what we collected from the caller in the IVR. And if we go back over to the dashboard, we'll see that that call is now connected, and we go to the active tab here. We can see the name of the agent who's handling the call, and I've also got some supervisory functionality available to me. I can join that call as a silent or whisper participant, in which case I'll be able to hear the conversation between the customer and the agent, and depending on the mode I joined in, I can actually speak to provide real-time coaching to Rebecca in the case of a whisper call. Or in the case of a silent call, I would be completely invisible. Rebecca nor the customer would know that I'm on the call, and I could do performance scoring or any other activities that are appropriate while Rebecca is talking with the customer. All of this is done through this web interface. Those calls are then directed to the Lync instance mapping to the user that's logged in and took the administrative action. So let's go ahead and close out of that call flow, and we'll disconnect the call from the customer. And we can see that that is reflected now on the dashboard. Rebecca will be toggled back to a state of available once she completes that call. Now notice she's not immediately going back to an available state. In this case, we've configured the system to give Rebecca a few seconds of after call time where she can perform some simple tasks like keying in some notes or selecting a disposition code. And that amount of time is configurable, so you can give your agents more or less time to perform those actions. The last piece of core functionality I wanted to show you is our call history screen. And what this allows you to do is go back in time and look for individual calls based on a number of different search parameters. So in this case, on our session inquiry screen, we see all previous calls that have been handled through this instance of the software. What I can do is narrow this down by looking for calls on a particular range of dates. I can look for calls that were handled by a particular agent. And what I see down below are records of all of the calls that meet the search criteria that I've specified. If I select one of these and scroll down, you see all of the information that we capture and make available to users over time. So in this case, we see the customer's phone number, the agent who took the call. If the agent keyed in notes or selected disposition codes, assuming you have those features turned on, those would be available here. And this is also where you access recordings. So the online audio recordings, if you have call recording enabled. In this particular instance, we have two different recordings. We actually have an audio recording of the customer walking through the IVR. We can hear all of the interactions both from our end as well as any input from the customer. This can be useful if we're using speech recognition as opposed to DTMF tones to collect input from the user. And then the second recording here is the actual conversation between the customer and the agent. In both cases, I can play these back directly with our integrated web playback controls, or I can download an offline copy of those. We can also attach these to internal systems if it makes sense. So if we want those attached to the CRM record for this customer, we can do that as well. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you is how you can edit a call flow. If I go back to our call flow screen and edit our one call flow, we see that the call flow that we looked at earlier were calls coming into, in this case, the queue for Latin America. The next step is that we play a prompt letting them know to please hold while we connect them, and then the last step is that they're routed into that queue and connected through to an agent. Now what I'm going to do here is make a change to this call flow to actually check to see if we have any agents available prior to routing that caller to the message and the queue. So what I'm going to do here is click on the Edit button on the left-hand side, and I'm going to change the next node, instead of being that please hold message, to be a queue check. And what we're going to do in that queue check is to see if we have any agents available. Now as soon as I save that change, you'll notice that my call flow diagram on the right-hand side updated dynamically. I can go into here now on that new check that we just added in, and I can edit this to say what we're going to do here is use the assigned queue, so in this case Latin America, and we're going to check one of the parameters that we have available on that queue. In this case, we're going to look to see if we have not just agents online, but any agents available. And we're actually going to say here, if we have at least one agent available, then we're going to go ahead and route the call down one path, but if we don't have any agents available, then we'll go down a new path. So what I'm going to do here is if the call is greater than the value that I specified, I'm going to go right back to that call flow that we had earlier. And if it's not, then I'm actually going to do a transfer. Go ahead and save that, and you'll see that our diagram updates once again. And then over here, I actually selected the wrong value there, so what I'm going to do is come back here. I didn't want a prompt, I want a transfer. So I'm going to select new transfer and save that off. And then on this new transfer here, what I'm going to do is edit this, and I'm going to specify that the type of transfer that we want to do is to transfer that to voicemail. And I'm going to then specify the voicemail box that I want that transferred to. In this case, I'm going to actually specify Rebecca's voicemail box. Now what the transfer type does is this actually leverages the integration we have with Exchange Unified Messaging, where when we route that call to the SIP address specified in the transfer URI, we're going to attach specific headers telling the Lync and Exchange infrastructure to bypass ringing the endpoint or any endpoints that are active on that particular address that we specified, and route that call straight into the voicemail box. So what we've done now is to change this call flow dynamically to say check to see if we have any agents available, and if we don't, go ahead and route that call straight through to Rebecca's voicemail box. And that's only going to happen if we specify the Latin America queue, which is option number 2 off that main menu. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and call back in, and I'm going to first toggle Rebecca's presence to a state of busy, and we'll see that this change takes effect dynamically. That call, rather than getting routed to the queue and waiting for Rebecca to come available as we saw it do earlier when we called into the North America queue, it's simply going to route straight through to Rebecca's voicemail box. So let me go ahead and place that call, and we'll see that change take effect.
Welcome to HR Central. For North America, press 1. For Latin America, press 2. Please leave a message for
Rebecca Laszlo.
To speak to an operator, press 0. After the tone, please.
So I'm going to go ahead and hang up there before leaving a message. What you can see now is we can actually make changes to that call flow dynamically in our browser-based call flow editor. We can save those, and those will immediately take effect. And here we're doing a very sophisticated check where we're not only checking to see, based on input the customer provided, do we have any agents capable of taking that call? We're actually extending that all the way out to seeing if their presence indicates that they're eligible to take a call right now. We feel like this gives our customers all of the capabilities they need to build very sophisticated call flows, manage those on their own, and then make changes to them as their business dictates. So they can go in and change how they want to service their customers, all in a self-service manner where they don't need to do any programming, they don't need to engage any consulting services. They can simply make the changes, publish them, and have those take effect immediately. Hopefully what you've seen through this demo is that we're providing a full contact center management platform that sits on top of Lync and integrates very natively with the Lync client on the agent side, where we're able to deliver contextual information directly in the conversation window. And on the administration and supervisory side, we're delivering everything with HTML and Silverlight-powered in-browser applications that those users can work with anywhere in the world that they're able to log into our infrastructure. They don't have to be sitting at their desk to monitor the call center. They don't even have to be sitting at their desk to make changes to the call flow and the way the calls are managed when customers dial into the call center.
All right, John, thanks so much for the demo. That was fantastic. So where do we go next? Where do people go to find out more?
We're delivering Clarity Connect to customers around the world. We do deliver the software globally. Customers that are interested can find more information at connect.claritycon.com. We sell the software both direct to customers as well as through a handful of strategic partners that you can also find information about on our website.
All right, thanks for spending time with us today.
Great, thanks, Guy.